Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Liberty. He was looking out at the dark space in front of them when something huge appeared. The alien ship was massive, at least 10 times bigger than his own vessel. Its black hull was covered with weapon systems that looked mean and dangerous. Jake had been a ship captain for 12 years. He had seen many strange things in space, but this was his first time meeting aliens. The alien ship looked like it was built for war. Long spikes stuck out from its sides, and red lights blinked all over its surface like angry eyes. "Captain, they want to talk to us," said Lisa Bennett. She was the person who handled all the radio messages on the ship. Her voice was calm, but Jake could see she was nervous. Her hands were shaking a little as she worked at her station. "Put them on the main screen," Jake told her. The big screen in front of them lit up. An alien face appeared, and it was not friendly. The creature looked like a giant lizard that could walk on 2 legs. Its skin was dark green with yellow stripes. Sharp teeth filled its mouth, and its eyes were bright red. It wore fancy armor that was covered in strange symbols. "I am High Admiral Vexstar of the Great Zephyrian Empire," the alien said. Its voice was deep and scary. "You humans have entered our space without permission. Your small ships are nothing compared to our mighty fleet." Jake looked around at his crew. Danny Rodriguez was the chief engineer, and he was trying not to smile. Amy Clark was the navigator, and she had put her hand over her mouth like she was trying to stop herself from laughing. The other crew members were also fighting back grins. "We did not know this was your space," Jake said politely. "Maybe we can talk about this and work something out?" Alien's red eyes got brighter with anger. "There is nothing to work out, human. You will do what I say, or you will face the power of our great army. We have defeated 17 different alien races across this galaxy. Your weak technology cannot fight against our superior weapons." Behind the alien leader, Jake could see other lizard creatures working at control panels. Their ship looked old and simple compared to human technology, but it was very big. The aliens seemed to think that bigger meant better. Listen carefully. Primitive human Vexstar continued. "You have 1 day to gather all your human ships and give up. If you do this, we might let your people work in our mines as slaves. If you do not do this, we will destroy every human ship we find." The alien leaned forward, showing more of his sharp teeth. "We are the masters of this part of space. We have conquered many worlds with our glorious fleet. Your people are weak and stupid. You cannot hope to match our great empire." Jake tried to keep a serious face, but it was getting harder. The alien was talking like he was the most powerful being in the universe, but his ship looked like something humans had built hundreds of years ago. The weapons on the alien vessel were simple compared to what humans had now. "We have been watching your outer colonies," Vexstar said. "We have seen your pathetic mining stations and research bases. Is this the best your species can build? Our smallest warship could destroy 10 of your largest vessels." Wow, Jake really had to work hard not to laugh. The aliens had been watching human mining platforms and science stations. They thought those civilian buildings were examples of human military power. It was like thinking a farm was the same as a fortress. "Your time is running out, human," the alien admiral continued. "Gather your weak ships and surrender, or face total destruction. We have brought 200 of our finest warships to deal with your pathetic resistance." 200 ships sounded like a lot, but Jake had seen the reports from human intelligence. The alien vessels were using old chemical rockets for power and simple metal bullets for weapons. It was like bringing stone axes to fight against laser cannons. "We will give you 1 solar rotation," Vexstar said. "That is 1 full day on your planet. After that time, if you have not surrendered, we will begin our attack. Your species will learn to fear the name of the Zephyrian Empire." The alien's image flickered and disappeared. The bridge was quiet for about 3 seconds. Then every person on the bridge started laughing. They could not help themselves. Danny Rodriguez was laughing so hard he had to hold on to his control panel. Amy Clark was wiping tears from her eyes. Even Lisa Bennett, who was usually very professional, was giggling. "Did he just threaten us with chemical rockets?" Danny asked between laughs. "I think he did," Amy replied. "And did you hear him say they conquered 17 species with that old technology?" Jake was trying to stop laughing long enough to think. Clearly, Lisa, send a message to Earth's command. Tell them about our new friends and their generous offer to let us work in their mines. Should I mention that they think our mining platforms are warships? Lisa asked, still smiling. Definitely mention that part, Jake said. He walked over to the main display and called up information about the alien fleet. The computer showed him exactly what they were dealing with. The Zephyrian ships were big, but they were also slow and poorly armed. Their shields were weak, and their weapons were centuries behind human technology. Captain, said Pete Williams, the weapons officer. Ran a quick scan of their flagship while they were talking. Their armor is just thick metal plates. Their weapons are kinetic cannons and basic plasma charges. My grandmother could build better weapons in her garage. This made everyone laugh even harder. The idea that these aliens thought they could threaten humanity with such old technology was almost too funny to believe. They have been watching our outer rim colonies for months, Jake said. All they have seen are mining stations, research labs, and civilian transport ships. They have no idea what human military technology actually looks like. Should we tell them? Amy asked. Not yet, Jake replied with a grin. I think we should let this play out. It might be educational for both sides. The crew spent the next hour reviewing everything they knew about the Zephyrian Empire. The aliens had indeed conquered 17 different species, but all of those species had been even more primitive than the Zephyrians themselves. The Empire had never faced an opponent with advanced technology. They'd gotten used to winning easy fights against weaker enemies. It makes sense now, Danny said. They never had to improve their technology because they kept fighting people who were even more behind than they were. Probably think they are the most advanced species in the galaxy, Jake said. They're about to get a very big surprise. As the U.S. Liberty continued on its patrol route, Jake could not stop thinking about the alien ultimatum. The Zephyrians were so confident, so sure of their superiority, they had no idea that they had just threatened the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for the possibility of meeting hostile aliens. Human ships were fast, well-armed, and protected by energy shields that could stop almost any attack. Human weapons could destroy entire planets if necessary. Though humans preferred not to use such extreme measures, the funniest part was that the Zephyrians thought they were being generous by offering to let humans work as slaves. They actually believed they were doing humanity a favor by not immediately destroying all human ships. Jake shook his head and smiled. This was going to be interesting, and the Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that there was a big difference between being the strongest bully in a small playground and being truly powerful. They were about to meet their first real challenge, and Jake had a feeling they were not going to handle it very well. The human response to this ultimatum was already being planned throughout human space, and Jake was certain it would not be what the aliens were expecting. The news about the alien ultimatum spread through human space faster than light itself. Every ship, every space station, and every colony world heard about the Zephyrian Empire's threat within hours. The reaction was the same everywhere humans lived and worked. They laughed. On Earth, in the underground command center of the Terran Defense Force, Admiral Susan Carter was trying to conduct a serious meeting. She had called together the top military leaders from across human space to discuss the alien threat, but every few minutes someone would start chuckling, and then the whole room would break into laughter again. I apologize, colleagues, Admiral Carter said, wiping tears from her eyes. But did they really call their fleet glorious? Have any of you seen the tactical reports on their ships? Saint General Tony Martinez from Mars Colony pulled up a holographic display showing the alien vessels. Susan, these ships are using technology we abandoned 300 years ago. Look at this. Chemical rockets for propulsion. Metal projectile weapons. Basic plasma charges that could not even scratch our civilian transport shields. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the head scientist who studied alien life, was shaking his head in amazement. The intelligence reports show they have been watching our outer colonies for months. They think our mining platforms represent our military strength. They have never seen an actual human warship. Commander Beth Young, who led the Special Operations Forces, pulled up another display. According to our deep space scouts, their mighty armada consists of exactly 200 ships. They are all using the same old technology. No energy shields, no faster-than-light weapons, no quantum targeting systems. The room erupted in laughter again. Admiral Carter had to bang her hand on the table to restore order. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said. "They are threatening the human race with technology that we stopped using before my great-great-grandmother was born, and they think we are primitives because they have only seen our civilian infrastructure." "It gets even better," added Dr. Walsh. "Our xenobiology team analyzed their communication signals. Their computer systems are so basic that our personal data tablets have more processing power than their flagship." Captain Rick Barnes, who commanded the orbital defense platforms around Earth, raised his hand. "Admiral, I have a question. Are we actually going to fight these aliens, or should we just send them a technical manual so they can upgrade their ships to something that might scratch our paint?" More laughter filled the room. Admiral Carter stood up and walked to the large viewing screen that showed the star map of human space. Red dots marked the positions of Zephyrian ships, while blue dots showed human vessels. There were a lot more blue dots. "Gentlemen and ladies," she said, "I think it is time we properly introduced ourselves to the Zephyrian Empire, but I want to make sure we handle this correctly. This is humanity's first contact with a hostile alien species, and we need to establish the right tone." "What kind of tone are you thinking about?" asked General Martinez. Admiral Carter smiled. "The kind that makes sure no other alien empire ever makes the same mistake. We need to show them exactly what human military technology can do, but we also need to be smart about it." Colonel Frank Miller, head of Fleet Intelligence, opened a new file on his tablet. "Admiral, we have been tracking Zephyrian movements. For the past year, they have conquered 17 species, but every single one of those species was less advanced than the Zephyrians themselves. The Empire has never faced an opponent with superior technology, so they got used to being the strongest bully in the playground," said Commander Young. "Exactly," replied Colonel Miller. "They developed a pattern. Find a weaker species, threaten them with their big ships, accept surrender, and move on to the next target. They never had to actually fight a real war." Admiral Carter nodded thoughtfully. "That explains their arrogance. They genuinely believe they are the most powerful force in the galaxy because they have never been challenged." Dr. Walsh brought up another display showing the alien communication. "There is something else interesting. When their admiral was threatening Captain Morrison, they kept talking about honor and glory and the greatness of their empire. These are not cold, calculating conquerors. They are emotional beings who take pride in their military reputation. Which means," said Admiral Carter, "that when we defeat them, it will not just be a military loss. It will be a complete destruction of their worldview." The meeting continued for another 2 hours as the human leadership planned their response. They reviewed the positions of all human ships in the area, analyzed the alien fleet composition, and discussed various tactical options. But the most important decision was about the message they wanted to send. Meanwhile, on civilian ships throughout human space, the reaction was just as amused. Captain Maria Santos was commanding a cargo hauler near the Jupiter colonies when she heard the news. Her crew of 12 people spent their entire shift making jokes about the alien threat. "Hey, Captain," called out her engineer, Bobby Chen. "Should we surrender our cargo ship to the mighty alien empire? We are carrying farming equipment to the outer colonies. Maybe they will think it is a secret weapon. I heard they want us to." "Work in their minds," said Navigator Ellen Price. "Do they know that human mining equipment can dig through solid rock faster than their ships can fly?" Even the civilian scientists were laughing. Dr. Patricia Adams was running a research station near Saturn when the alien ultimatum reached her. She called her team together and showed them the analysis of alien technology.
"Oh, friends,"
she said, "I want you to understand something. The computer system that controls our coffee machine is more advanced than their flagship's main computer. The power generator that runs our lights produces more energy than their main engines." Her assistant, Mark Thompson, raised his hand. "Dr. Adams, are we actually in danger from these aliens?" "Mark," she replied, "we are in about as much danger as an elephant is from an angry ant." Back on Earth, Admiral Carter was finalizing the human response plan. She had decided to gather a fleet that would make the aliens understand exactly who they were dealing with. But she also wanted to have some fun with the situation. "How many ships can we deploy without compromising our other operations?" asked her staff. Colonel Miller checked his numbers. "We can deploy up to 2,000 vessels without affecting our regular patrols and colony defense duties." 2,000 ships against their 200, mused Admiral Carter. "That seems like enough to make our point. But I want this to be educational, not just overwhelming." "What do you have in mind?" asked Commander Young. "I want to show them the difference between human civilian technology and human military technology. Let them see what our real capabilities look like. But I also want to give them a chance to learn from this experience." General Martinez nodded. "You want to defeat them so completely that they never think about threatening anyone again, but without unnecessary destruction." "Exactly. We are not conquerors. We are teachers. And sometimes the best way to teach someone is to show them how much they do not know." The orders went out across human space within hours. Captains received their instructions with grins and chuckles. This was going to be the most one-sided military engagement in galactic history. And everyone knew it. Captain Jake Morrison, still patrolling in the UES Liberty, received his new orders with satisfaction. He was going to be part of something historic. Humanity was about to announce its presence to the galaxy in a way that no one would ever forget. The Zephyrian Empire had demanded surrender within 1 day. They were going to get an answer, but it would not be the one they were expecting. Humanity was preparing to show the galaxy exactly what happened when someone threatened the human race. And somewhere in the depths of space, human ships began, moving toward their positions, ready to provide the Zephyrian Empire with the most educational experience of their lives. High Admiral Vexstar stood in the command center of his flagship, the crushing Fang. Around him, dozens of Zephyrian officers worked at their stations, preparing for what they believed would be an easy victory. The Admiral looked at the large, tactical display that showed his fleet of 200 warships arranged in perfect battle formation. "Report on human activity." Vexstar commanded his intelligence officer. Commander Zekmoth stepped forward, holding a data tablet. "Hi, Admiral. Our scouts have detected only minimal movement from the human settlements. A few small civilian ships have been spotted moving between their colonies, but nothing that looks like military preparation." Vexstar's mandibles clicked. Together in satisfaction, this was exactly what he had expected. The humans were clearly terrified of the mighty Zephyrian fleet. They knew they could not win against superior alien technology, so they were not even trying to fight. "Any sign of their military vessels?" Vexstar asked. "None. Hi, Admiral. We have been monitoring their communication channels, but we only detect routine civilian traffic. Mining reports, cargo manifests, scientific data, nothing that suggests they are preparing for war." This made Vexstar even more pleased. In his long career, he had conquered 17 different species across the galaxy. The pattern was always the same: show up with overwhelming force, make demands, and watch the enemy surrender without a fight. The humans were following the same script as all the others. "They know they cannot match our power," Vexstar said to his officers. 200 ships of the Zephyrian Empire against their pathetic collection of mining platforms and research stations. Even these primitive humans are not stupid enough to fight a battle they cannot win. The other Zephyrian officers made sounds of agreement. They had all served in previous conquests, and had seen how other species reacted when faced with their fleet. Fear, desperation, and quick surrender were the usual responses. "Hi, Admiral," said the weapons officer. "Should we begin moving toward their main colonies? We could position ourselves to strike at their population centers if they refuse to." "Surrender. Not yet," Vexstar replied. "We gave them 1 solar rotation to make their decision. We are honorable warriors. We'll wait for their response before we begin the destruction of their civilization." What Vexstar and his officers did not know was that something extraordinary was happening in the empty space around them. Far beyond the range of their simple sensors, human ships were arriving in massive numbers. But these were not the civilian vessels that the Zephyrians had been watching. These were warships of the Terran Defense Force, and they were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new ship. the UES Retribution. Admiral Carter had transferred him from the Liberty to command one of humanity's newest stealth cruisers. The ship was 3 times larger than his old vessel, and packed with technology that would seem like magic to the Zephyrians. "Stealth systems are operating perfectly, Captain," reported his new science officer, Dr. Helen Foster. "The aliens have no idea we are here." Jake looked at his tactical display, which showed something that would have terrified the Zephyrians. If they could see it, human ships were arriving from every direction, taking positions around the alien fleet. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and massive dreadnoughts were forming a sphere of steel around the unsuspecting Zephyrians. "Current ship count?" Jake asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Greg Palmer checked his console. "We now have 800 human vessels in position, Captain. More are arriving every hour. The Zephyrians are completely surrounded, but their sensors are too primitive to detect our stealth fields." Jake smiled. The human fleet was growing larger by the hour, but the aliens still thought they were facing a handful of civilian ships. It was like watching someone prepare to fight an army while thinking they were facing a single unarmed person. "Message from Admiral Carter," announced Communications Officer Lisa Bennett. She had transferred with Jake to the new ship. "She wants to know if we are ready to begin the demonstration. Tell the Admiral we are in position and awaiting orders," Jake replied. On Earth, Admiral Carter was coordinating the largest fleet operation in human history. Her command center showed the positions of over 1,500 human ships, all invisible to alien sensors. The Zephyrians were sitting in the middle of this massive fleet, like a mouse surrounded by sleeping cats. "Admiral," reported Colonel Miller, "we have achieved complete tactical superiority. Alien fleet is surrounded on all sides. They have no escape route and no idea what is about to happen to them." "Excellent," Admiral Carter replied. "About our special weapon systems?" "All ships report ready, Admiral. Energy shields are at full power, quantum cannons are charged, and our defensive systems are online. We could disable their entire fleet in less than 5 minutes if necessary." Admiral Carter nodded. The plan was not to destroy the Zephyrian fleet, but to educate them. Humanity wanted to make sure that this empire, and any others who might be watching, understood exactly what they were dealing with. "Any word from other alien species in the area?" she asked. Dr. Walsh looked up from his station. "Our deep space monitors have detected at least 12 different species observing this situation from a safe distance. Word has spread quickly through the galactic community. Everyone wants to see what happens when someone threatens humanity." This was perfect. Admiral Carter wanted this demonstration to have the widest possible audience. The message needed to reach every corner of the galaxy. Back in space, the Zephyrian deadline was approaching. High Admiral Vexstar was becoming impatient. He had expected the humans to contact him hours ago with their surrender. Instead, there had been complete silence from the human colonies. "Hi, Admiral," reported the communications officer. "We are receiving a transmission from one of the human ships." "Put it on the main screen," Vexstar commanded. The display showed Captain Jake Morrison standing on the bridge of the UES Retribution. But to the Zephyrians, it looked like the same small human ship they had seen before. "Hi, Admiral Vexstar," Jake said politely. "This is Captain Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. We have considered your generous offer to work in your mines." Vexstar leaned forward in his command chair. Finally, the humans were ready to surrender. This had taken longer than usual, but the result would be the same as always. "And what is your answer, human?" Vexstar asked. Jake smiled, and there was something in that smile that should have warned the alien admiral. "Our answer is no, thank you. We appreciate the offer, but we have decided to decline." Vexstar's red eyes flashed with anger. "Then you have chosen destruction, foolish human. You cannot hope to match the power of the Zephyrian Empire. We have 200 of the finest warships in the galaxy." 200 ships? Jake repeated thoughtfully. "That is impressive. We were wondering. Though, would you like to see what a real fleet looks like?" Before Vexstar could answer, something impossible began to happen. The space around his fleet started to shimmer and ripple. One by one, human ships began to appear. Not just a few ships, but hundreds of them, and thousands. The Zephyrian tactical displays went crazy as more and more human vessels became visible. These were not the small civilian ships they had been expecting. These were massive warships that dwarfed even the largest Zephyrian vessels. "What is happening?" Vexter shouted at his officers. "Hi, Admiral," stammered the sensor operator. "I am detecting over 1,500 human ships. They're surrounding us completely." "How did they get so close without us seeing them?" Vexter stared at the tactical display in shock. His mighty fleet of 200 ships was completely surrounded by human vessels that were clearly far more advanced than anything the Zephyrians possessed. Impressive technology, is it not? Jake's voice came through the communication system. "We call it stealth shielding. Your sensors are simply not advanced enough to detect our ships when we do not want to be seen." The largest human ship, a dreadnought, that was easily 5 times the size of the Zephyrian flagship, moved into position directly in front of Vextar's vessel. Its hull gleamed with advanced armor and weapon systems that looked like they belonged in a science fiction story. "Hi, Admiral," Jake continued. "Allow me to properly introduce humanity to your empire. You claim to have conquered 17 species with your glorious fleet. We've liberated over 40 worlds from various tyrannical governments, including several that we believe were your former victims." Vextar realized with growing horror that his empire had just made the biggest mistake in its history. They had not threatened a primitive species. They had challenged the most powerful military force in the galaxy. High Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in complete shock. The screen showed over 1,500 human ships surrounding his fleet of 200 vessels. Each human ship was larger and more advanced than anything in the Zephyrian Empire. He felt his stomach drop as he realized the terrible mistake his empire had made. "This cannot be real," Vextar whispered to himself. "How did they hide so many ships from our sensors?" Commander Zekmoth was frantically working at his station, trying to understand what was happening. "Hi, Admiral. Our scanning systems show that the human vessels are using some kind of advanced stealth technology. They were invisible to our sensors until they chose to reveal themselves." On the main screen, Captain Jake Morrison continued speaking from his ship. Behind him, Vextar could see human officers working calmly at their stations. They did not look worried or afraid. They looked like they were enjoying themselves. "Hi, Admiral," Jake said. "You mentioned that you wanted to see our military capabilities. We thought it would be educational to provide a demonstration. But first, we should address some of your misconceptions about human technology." Jake gestured to someone off screen, and the display changed to show technical information about human ships. "You've been watching our outer colonies for months, studying what you thought were examples of our military strength. Those were actually civilian mining platforms and research stations." Vextar felt his blood turn cold. The structures they had been analyzing were not military installations at all. They were civilian buildings. If those basic facilities had impressed his intelligence officers, what did that say about actual human military technology? "The ships you are seeing now," Jake continued, "represent a small portion of the Terran Defense Force. We did not want to bring our entire fleet, because that would have been excessive for dealing with 200 vessels using 300-year-old technology." The insult hit Vextar like a physical blow. The humans were saying that the pride of the Zephyrian Empire was centuries behind their current capabilities. "You are lying," Vextar snarled. "No species could have technology so far advanced. We have conquered 17 worlds with these ships." Jake nodded sympathetically. "Yes, we know about your conquests. We have been monitoring your empire for quite some time. You have indeed defeated 17 species, but all of them were less advanced than you are. You never faced an opponent with superior technology, so you never needed to improve your own." This was true, and Vextar knew it. Every species the Empire had conquered had been using even more primitive technology than the Zephyrians. They had grown comfortable always, being the most advanced force in any conflict. "Hi, Admiral," Jake said. "We are going to demonstrate the difference between your weapons and ours. Please prepare your flagship for combat." Vextar felt a surge of desperate hope. Maybe his ship could at least damage one of the human vessels. Maybe they could show these arrogant humans that the Zephyrian Empire was not to be taken lightly. "All weapons, target the human ship that is speaking to us," Vextar commanded. "Full power." Show them what Zephyrian firepower can do. The weapons. Officer began charging the main cannon of the crushing fang. The massive gun was the pride of Zephyrian engineering, capable of destroying entire cities with a single shot. Surely, even advanced human technology could not stand against such power. Firing main cannon, the weapons officer announced. The enormous energy beam shot out from the Zephyrian flagship, bright enough to be seen across the entire star system. It struck the human ship directly in the center. Vextor held his breath, waiting to see the human vessel explode into fragments, but nothing happened. The energy beam hit the human ship and simply disappeared. There was no explosion, no damage, no effect at all. The human vessel continued floating in space, as if nothing had occurred. What just happened? Vextor demanded. Hi, Admiral, the weapons officer said in a shaking voice. Our most powerful weapon had no effect on their ship. It was like shooting at solid rock with a toy gun. On the communication screen, Jake looked completely unconcerned. That was interesting. Hi, Admiral. Main cannon appears to have a power output of approximately 50,000 energy units. Our basic defensive shields can absorb attacks up to 5 million energy units without taking any damage. The bridge of the crushing fang fell silent. Their most powerful weapon was 100 times weaker than what the human shields could easily handle. Now, Jake said, let us show you what human weapons can do. Please observe. On Vextor's tactical display, one of the smaller human ships moved forward. It was labeled as a destroyer, which in human terms meant it was one of their lightest warships. But even this destroyer was larger than most Zephyrian cruisers. We will use our training setting for this demonstration, Jake announced.
Race, we do
not want to cause unnecessary damage. The human destroyer fired a single beam of blue energy. The beam was so precise that it passed through the Zephyrian flagship's shields as if they did not exist. But instead of destroying the ship, the beam surgically disabled every weapon system on the crushing fang without harming any of the crew. Vextor watched in horror as his tactical display showed all weapons going offline. The human attack had been so precise that it had only targeted the ship's offensive capabilities. Everything else remained undamaged. Impossible, breathed Commander Zikmoth. How did they disable our weapons without affecting our life support or engines? Advanced targeting systems, Jake explained helpfully. Our computers can identify and disable specific ship systems without causing collateral damage. It is very useful when we want to capture enemy vessels intact. Vextor realized that the humans could have destroyed his entire fleet in seconds if they had wanted to. Instead, they had chosen to demonstrate their overwhelming superiority while keeping everyone alive. That was our training setting, Jake continued. Would you like to see what our weapons can do when we actually try? No, Vextor shouted quickly. He had seen enough. His empire's most powerful ship had been rendered helpless by a single shot from one of humanity's smaller vessels. Around the Zephyrian fleet, the other alien ships were reporting similar results. Human destroyers were methodically disabling Zephyrian vessels one by one. Each shot was perfectly accurate, removing weapons while leaving everything else intact. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Zephyrian armada had been rendered completely helpless. Hi, Admiral, Jake said. We hope this demonstration has been educational. Your empire challenged humanity to a military contest. This is the result. Vextor slumped in his command chair, defeated. His mighty fleet, the terror of 17 conquered worlds, had been neutralized by a force so advanced that they treated the battle like a training exercise. What do you want from us? Vextor asked quietly. We want you to understand something very important, Jake replied. Humanity does not seek conquest or domination. We prefer peace and cooperation. But when someone threatens us or attacks innocent people, we respond with overwhelming force. The largest human ship, the massive dreadnought, moved closer to the Zephyrian flagship. Size was so enormous that it blocked out the stars behind it. Your empire has enslaved 17 different species, Jake continued. Those days are over.
Yes.
We speak, human ships are liberating every world under Zephyrian control. Your former slaves are being freed and given the choice to govern themselves. Vexstar felt the last of his pride crumble away. Not only had his fleet been defeated, but his entire empire was being dismantled by human forces across the galaxy. "This demonstration will be broadcast to every species in this sector of space," Jake said. "We want everyone to understand what happens when someone threatens humanity or oppresses innocent people." Indeed, dozens of alien species had been watching the encounter from safe distances. The news of humanity's overwhelming technological superiority would spread across the galaxy. "Within days, High Admiral," Jake concluded, "your ships will be escorted to neutral space where you and your crews will be given a choice. You can accept exile and live peacefully, or you can face trial for your crimes against the 17 species you enslaved." Vexstar nodded slowly. He understood that he was completely at the mercy of these humans. His empire was finished, his fleet was helpless, and his reputation as a conqueror was destroyed forever. The demonstration was complete. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in the most decisive way possible. 6 months had passed since what historians across the galaxy now called the Great Humbling. The Zephyrian Empire, once the terror of 17 different worlds, no longer existed. High Admiral Vexstar sat in a simple chair in the detention area of the UES Retribution. Staring out at the stars through a small window, Captain Jake Morrison entered the room carrying 2 cups of coffee and a datapad. He had been meeting with Vexstar regularly over the past months, trying to help the former Admiral understand what had happened to his empire and why. "Good morning, Vexstar," Jake said, offering one of the cups to the alien. "I brought you some coffee. I know you have developed a taste for human beverages." Vexstar accepted the cup gratefully. The hot drink had become one of the few pleasures in his confined life. "Thank you, Captain Morrison. You continue to show kindness to a defeated enemy." Jake sat down across from the former Admiral. "You are not our enemy anymore, Vexstar. You are a student, and we are your teachers. The question is whether you are willing to learn." Over the months, Jake had watched Vexstar slowly change from an arrogant conqueror to a thoughtful individual who was beginning to understand the mistakes his empire had made. It was not an easy process, but it was necessary. "I have been thinking about what you told me last week," Vexstar said slowly, "about how humans approach war and peace. You said that true strength comes from protecting others, not from conquering them." "That is correct," Jake replied. "Any species can learn to destroy things. It takes wisdom to know when to fight and when to show mercy. It takes even greater wisdom to know how to build something better after the fighting is over." Jake activated his datapad and showed Vexstar a star map of the galaxy. "Would you like to see what has happened to your former territories?" Vexstar looked at the display with mixed emotions. The 17 worlds that had once been under Zephyrian control were now marked in green, indicating they were free and independent. "Each of those worlds now governs itself," Jake explained. "We helped them establish democratic governments and provided them with the technology they need to defend themselves. They are no longer afraid of being conquered by anyone." "And my people?" Vexstar asked quietly. "Most of the Zephyrian military accepted our offer of exile to a neutral world where they can live peacefully. About 30% chose to stand trial for war crimes. They are serving their sentences by helping rebuild the worlds they damaged." Jake switched the display to show another section of space. But the most interesting development has been the reaction of other species throughout the galaxy. The star map now showed dozens of different alien territories, many of them marked with various warning symbols that indicated hostile or aggressive civilizations. 3 major empires immediately requested peace negotiations after they heard about your defeat, Jake continued. "The Krathan hegemony, the Stellar Dominion, and the Ironclaw Federation all sent ambassadors to Earth within weeks of our demonstration." Vexstar was amazed. "Those are some of the most aggressive species in the galaxy. The Krathan alone have conquered over 30 worlds." "Had conquered," Jake corrected. "They are currently in the process of freeing all their slave worlds and transitioning to a peaceful government structure. Apparently they decided that avoiding a war with humanity was more important than maintaining their empire." This was almost impossible for Vexstar to believe. The Krathan hegemony had been even more powerful than the Zephyrian Empire. The idea that they would voluntarily give up their conquered territories was shocking. "How did you convince them to do this?" he asked. Jake smiled. "We did not have to convince them of anything. We simply shared the recording of our encounter with your fleet. After seeing what happened to 200 Zephyrian ships in less than 10 minutes, they decided that cooperation was preferable to conflict. The recording of the Zephyrian defeat had indeed spread throughout the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Every species with the technology to receive interstellar communications had seen the demonstration of human military superiority. But we did not stop there, Jake continued. We also showed them what human technology could do for peaceful purposes. Medical advances that can cure diseases, agricultural techniques that can end hunger, energy systems that can power entire civilizations without harming the environment. Jake brought up another display showing human aid ships arriving at various alien worlds. We offered to share our technology with any species that agreed to treat their people fairly and live peacefully with their neighbors. Vexstar studied the images of human ships delivering supplies and equipment to alien colonies. You are giving away your technological advantages. Why would you do such a thing? Because we learned something important long ago, Jake replied. A galaxy full of free, prosperous, and peaceful species is much safer and more interesting than a galaxy full of slaves and tyrants. When everyone is doing well, everyone benefits. This concept was difficult for Vexstar to understand. The Zephyrian Empire had always believed that power came from controlling others and taking their resources. The idea of voluntarily helping potential rivals become stronger seemed like madness. I think I am beginning to understand, Vexstar said slowly. Your strength does not come from making others weak. It comes from making everyone stronger. You are learning, Jake said with approval. When you lift others up, they become allies instead of enemies. When you share knowledge, it grows instead of diminishing. When you treat other species with respect, they want to work with you instead of fighting against you. Jake showed Vexstar one more display. This one showed the current political map of the galaxy. Large areas that had previously been marked as hostile empires were now colored blue, indicating peaceful democratic governments. In 6 months, we have seen the liberation of over 100 worlds, Jake said. Dozens of species that were living under oppression are now free. Former enemies are becoming trading partners and allies. And what about species that refuse to change? Vexstar asked. Jake's expression became more serious. There are still a few empires that believe they can continue their old ways, I think. That if they avoid confronting humanity directly, they can keep oppressing others. They are mistaken. You will stop them. You will give them the same choice we gave everyone else. Change peacefully or be changed by force. Most species are intelligent, enough to choose the peaceful option once they understand what the alternative looks like. Vexstar finished his coffee and set down the empty cup. Captain Morrison, what will happen to me now? Jake had been expecting this question. That depends on you, Vexstar. You can continue to live quietly in exile, or you can choose to help us. Help you how? Many species are struggling to transition from military dictatorships to peaceful democracies. They need advisors who understand both systems. Someone who has experienced the failure of conquest and learned the value of cooperation could be very valuable. Vexstar considered this offer carefully. You would trust a former enemy with such responsibility? We would trust someone who has learned from his mistakes and wants to make things better, Jake replied. The choice is yours. Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, the effects of humanity's intervention continued to spread. On worlds that had been enslaved for generations, people were learning to govern themselves. Former military officers were retraining as teachers and engineers. Weapons factories were being converted to produce medical equipment and farming tools. Captain Jake Morrison had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the Terran peacekeeping fleet. His ships patrolled the space lanes, ensuring that the newly freed worlds remained safe from any remaining threats. On Earth, Admiral Susan Carter looked at reports from across human space with satisfaction. The galaxy was becoming a much better place. Humanity had established itself as the guardian of freedom and justice. But perhaps the most important change was in the attitude of alien species toward each other.
Ow.
For the first time in Galactic History cooperation was becoming more common than conflict. Species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to work together. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of galactic civilization had begun. And at the center of it, all humanity stood ready to protect the peace they had helped create.